What are you doing? Stop, right now. That was me screaming at full volume at 6:17 a.m., barefoot on cold concrete, pajama pants sliding halfway down my hips, charging down my driveway like I completely lost my mind. Because the woman who ran our homeowners association was standing there, crowbar raised, slamming it into a pickup truck like she was auditioning for a true crime special. Crash. The windshield burst outward, glass spraying across the asphalt like glitter forged in hell. The sound was brutal, decisive, nothing accidental about it. No confusion. No mistake. That was a deliberate, two-handed swing meant to destroy. She turned at the sound of my voice. Slowly, calmly, the way someone does when they're irritated they've been interrupted mid-task. Her white tennis skirt, spotless just minutes earlier, was now streaked with black oil. Her cardigan had torn clean at the shoulder. The crowbar hung loose in her grip. "This junk is lowering our property values," she said, flat and icy. Crash. The side mirror snapped clean off, wires dangling like exposed nerves. "That's not my truck." I shouted, "You need to stop." She didn't even glance at me. "I don't care who owns the trash." Then she leaned forward and dragged the crowbar down the driver's side door, slow and intentional, carving the words "Get out" deep into the metal. The shriek of metal on steel echoed to the cul-de-sac. Nails on a chalkboard turned up to 11. That's when I noticed the neighbors. Doors cracked open, phones raised, screens glowing. Nobody said a word. Everyone was recording. 8 years of petty regulations. 8 years of selective fines. 8 years of towing threats and ego trips. And now, finally, a felony captured in crystal clear 4K. She had no idea whose truck she was destroying. When I finally yelled, really yelled, who the actual owner was, she froze mid-swing. The color drained from her face. So fast, it was almost impressive. That moment, that's where the story ends. But to understand how we got there, we need to rewind. 18 months earlier, I bought a small, forgettable house in a place called Briar Hollow Estates. Cookie-cutter suburb, trim lawns, polite waves from passing neighbors. It looked peaceful, which was all I wanted. HOA fees were $280 a month. Expensive, sure, but acceptable if it bought quiet. I was coming off a divorce that didn't just hurt emotionally. It wrecked me financially. Lawyer bills, asset splits, the kind of breakup where you lose your dog and your dignity on the same afternoon. I didn't want conflict. I wanted silence. Somewhere I could rebuild without questions. Briar Hollow seemed perfect. What no one tells you during the closing walkthrough is that the HOA president, Evelyn Cross, ruled that neighborhood like her personal dictatorship. Evelyn was late 50s, bottle blonde hair permanently frozen, somewhere around 1997. Real estate agent by day, suburban tyrant by night. She wore perfume so overpowering you could smell her 3 houses away. Sweet, cloying, suffocating. She was married to a retired police lieutenant, which she mentioned in every conversation like it was a concealed weapon. Every morning, without exception, she patrolled the streets. Leaf blowers droned, sprinklers hissed, and above it all, her voice sharp, nasal, commanding, calling out violations like a drill sergeant. The scratch of her pen on citation slips became the most feared sound in the neighborhood. Week 2, that's all it took. I came home from a 12-hour shift repairing MRI machines. Exhausted, grease still under my nails. And there was a bright yellow notice flapping on my front door like a surrender flag. $150 fine. Reason, non-compliant mailbox color. I stared at the notice, then at my mailbox, then at the 30 identical mailboxes lining the street. Same faded navy blue, every single one. I counted them. Yes, I'm that guy. I called Evelyn immediately. "Ma'am, my mailbox is identical to everyone else's." "It appears black in certain lighting," she said, using the tone teachers reserve for kids they think are slow. "That violates Section 4.2.7-2.7 of the Aesthetic Guidelines." I wrote the check. That was my first mistake. Because once someone like Evelyn sees that you'll comply quietly, she doesn't interpret it as cooperation. She smells weakness. Over the next few months, a pattern emerged. Single men got hit harder. Minority families got cited more often. Anyone who didn't fit Evelyn's mental brochure of an acceptable resident suddenly had issues. Mrs. Anwin was fined for excessive vegetable gardening. The Harrisons, an interracial couple, somehow always had trash cans positioned incorrectly. Meanwhile, Evelyn's friends parked RVs in their driveways for weeks with zero consequences. Selective enforcement. Obvious. Blatant. Then I met Lena. Smart. Dry sense of humor. Drove a pickup truck. We met at a coffee shop near the courthouse. She said she worked in legal but didn't elaborate. I didn't push. She started staying over a few nights a week. Her truck, unassuming, government plates I barely registered at the time, became a regular sight in my driveway. That's when Evelyn's focus snapped onto me like a heat-seeking missile. 3 weeks after Lena and I made things official, I woke up to a cheerful little announcement stuffed into my mailbox. New guest parking guidelines. Effective immediately. Guests could park on the street for a maximum of 48 hours in any 30-day period. Violations would be fined retroactively at $75 per day. My stomach dropped. Lena's truck had been there 3 days that week. This is insane, I told her that night. It's like she's timing my driveway. Lena raised an eyebrow, that sharp, analytical look. Did the HOA membership vote on this? I laughed. Vote? No. She paused. HOAs usually can't change rules like that without following procedure. The next morning, the first parking violation sat under my windshield wiper. $225. Printed on thick, expensive paper. That's when something clicked. I'd heard this before. During my divorce, my lawyer had explained HOA bylaws, procedures, voting requirements. Evelyn wasn't just being petty. She was abusing power. And she had no idea she'd finally picked the wrong person. All right, pause the movie for a second. This is where I put an arm around you like an older brother and explain what was really happening here. Not just to me, but to countless people living under HOAs they don't fully understand. A homeowners association isn't a tiny government run on vibes and grudges. It's a corporation. That means rules don't just materialize because someone with a clipboard wakes up annoyed. Most HOAs are bound by their own bylaws, rules that require notice, documentation, and this part matters, a vote from the membership before new restrictions can be enforced. From a legal standpoint, the parking rule Evelyn rolled out without warning was already sketchy. Retroactive fines are a major warning sign. No documented vote? Even worse. But the biggest red flag of all was selective enforcement. Penalizing certain people while ignoring identical violations by others. That's the exact point where irritating HOA nonsense crosses into real, actionable misconduct. Now here's the psychological layer most people overlook. This wasn't really about parking or mailboxes. It never is. People like Evelyn aren't motivated by order. They're motivated by control. HOAs give insecure people just enough authority to feel powerful, but not enough oversight to keep them accountable. So they probe boundaries. They start small, minor fines, quiet warnings. They watch closely to see who questions them and who just pays. Once you comply without resistance, you get categorized as safe prey. That's when the pressure ramps up. It isn't random, it's conditioning. The end game is to wear you down emotionally and financially until leaving feels easier than fighting back. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people fall for it. The system relies on silence, confusion, and the assumption that authority figures must know what they're doing. The real shift happens the moment you stop equating authority with legality. That single change flips the entire power dynamic. And it's exactly what Evelyn never anticipated. Once I stopped assuming Evelyn knew what she was doing, everything changed. I didn't confront her. I didn't argue. I didn't send angry emails at 2 a.m. like she probably expected. I did something far more dangerous to someone like her. I paid attention. Every morning, I took longer walks. Coffee in one hand, phone in the other. I started noticing which cars stayed parked overnight, which lawns were mysteriously exempt from inspections, which houses never received violations, no matter how blatantly they ignored the rules. Patterns formed quickly, and they weren't subtle. Evelyn's son threw a weekend party. 5 extra cars lined the street for almost a week. No tickets. Her book club blocked half of Maple Lane, every Thursday night. No tickets. Her brother-in-law's work truck sat on Elm Street for nearly 2 weeks during renovations. Not a single notice. Meanwhile, Mrs. England was fined because her daughter visited for 3 days. The Harrisons were cited because their son came home from college. Every violation landed on the same kind of people, the ones Evelyn clearly didn't think belonged. So I filed a formal records request, HOA meeting minutes, violation logs, financial statements. Clean, polite, completely by the book. That's when Evelyn made her first catastrophic mistake. The HOA secretary, sweet, elderly, still printing emails and filing them into folders, accidentally included internal correspondence in the response packet. And there it was, printed, highlighted, impossible to explain away. That guy is becoming a problem. His truck-driving girlfriend makes the street look cheap. We need to pressure him before property values suffer. No ambiguity, no deniability, just naked intent. I wasn't angry. I was calm in that specific way people get right before something irreversible happens. When Lena read the emails, she didn't gasp or swear. She just went quiet, focused, professional. This isn't harassment anymore, she said finally. This is discrimination. And then Evelyn escalated. Because bullies only have 2 modes when challenged, retreat or go nuclear. She rolled out new landscaping rules. Mandatory professional maintenance, monthly inspections, fines for weeds. And the kicker, only HOA-approved vendors allowed. Coincidentally, the only approved vendor was her brother-in-law. That's when I remembered something random from my divorce days. A rant I'd overheard about HOAs, native plants, water conservation laws, and state protections. So I did the one thing Evelyn never expected. I learned the rules better than she did. Turns out in our state, drought-resistant landscaping is legally protected. HOAs can't force you to waste water just to satisfy aesthetic preferences. 3 days later, my lawn was gone. Out went the thirsty grass. In came native plants, lavender, wildflowers, things that actually belonged there. The neighborhood smelled better almost immediately. Evelyn showed up on day 2. Clipboard clenched like a weapon. "This isn't a lawn," she snapped. "Nope," I said. "It's a conservation-compliant landscape. Completely legal." Her face cycled through about 6 emotions in 10 seconds. That afternoon, she sent a county inspector to my house. Except he looked suspiciously like the guy in her family photos. Same face. Same nervous energy. I asked for credentials. He left fast. That's when the neighborhood started to change. People approached me quietly, asked questions, took notes, started documenting their own violations. Evelyn lost control. 7 violations in 10 days. Garbage cans, blinds, imaginary oil stains, noise complaints for pets I didn't own. She buried me in paper, hoping I'd drown. Instead, I filed a public records request for HOA finances. That's when everything blew wide open. Her salary had tripled. Vendor contracts were wildly inflated. Shell companies, backdated fines, Photoshop timestamps, and buried in county archives, the original HOA incorporation papers, fee caps, legal limits. Numbers don't lie. Evelyn had been illegally collecting money for years. Millions of dollars from hundreds of families. When I called Lena that night, my hands were shaking. "I need to ask you something," I said. "When you said you worked in legal, what exactly do you do?" There was a pause. "I'm the district attorney," she said, "and I've been investigating HOA fraud for 2 years. This neighborhood is my main case." Everything clicked. I wasn't fighting alone. And then, because irony commits fully, Evelyn snapped. At 6:17 a.m., she took a crowbar to Lena's truck. Government plates. Cameras everywhere. Federal felony. No wiggle room. We didn't confront her. We waited. Organized a community meeting. Invited everyone. Cameras rolling. Evidence ready. Evelyn walked in confident. Smug. Ready to dominate. She didn't realize she was walking into a sting. When the evidence hit the screen, emails, finances, video, the room went dead silent. Then Lena stood up, badge visible, voice steady. "Evelyn Cross," she said, "you are under arrest." The handcuffs clicked. 8 years of power collapsed in seconds. 6 months later, Briar Hollow didn't look the same. And I don't just mean the lawns. Evelyn took a plea deal. Federal charges have a way of curing theatrical behavior. Prison time, restitution, permanent loss of her real estate license. The HOA board dissolved within a week. Like rats fleeing a sinking ship. Every illegal fee was refunded. Some families got checks large enough to finally breathe again. But that's not what stayed with me. What stuck was a silence that vanished. For years, people whispered in driveways, complained in private group chats, always ending with the same sentence. But what can you do? That question ruled the neighborhood longer than Evelyn ever did. After everything came out, it stopped being whispered. People started asking for documents, reading bylaws, showing up to meetings. Mrs. Enwin became treasurer and implemented quarterly audits. The Harrisons helped rewrite enforcement rules, so they applied equally or not at all. Guest parking limits disappeared overnight. Vendor contracts went to competitive bidding, and somehow costs dropped by half. Funny how that works. Even the landscaping changed. Native plants spread. Water bills dropped. The air smelled like lavender instead of chemicals. Birds came back. Actual birds, not angry email pretending to be violations. Legally speaking, none of this was revolutionary. The protections were already there. The laws already existed. The problem was never a lack of rules. It was a lack of people willing to challenge the person pretending to own them. Psychologically, this is the part one thing about the most. People like Evelyn don't wake up evil. They accumulate power in small, boring increments. A fine here, an exception there, silence after silence. Every time nobody pushes back, they learn a dangerous lesson. That authority goes unquestioned if you act confident enough. That's the real trap. A system built on exhaustion, confusion, and the belief that resistance costs more than compliance. Most HOA abuse doesn't survive scrutiny. It survives apathy. The lesson is uncomfortable but simple. Systems become abusive when ordinary people assume someone else is watching. Nobody was watching Evelyn, until suddenly everyone was. And here's the part one wants you to sit with. I wasn't special. I wasn't brave in a cinematic way. I was tired, stubborn, and angry enough to document instead of complain. That's it. No secret legal brilliance. No heroic speeches. Just receipts. Most corrupt systems don't collapse because of one dramatic showdown. They collapse because the paper trail gets too heavy to ignore. If you live in an HOA or deal with one, here's what I wish someone had told me sooner. Read the bylaws. Ask for meeting minutes. Document everything. Never assume they wouldn't do that. And don't confuse confidence with competence. Authority that can't tolerate transparency is already broken. So I'm genuinely curious. Where are you watching from? Are you in an HOA? Have you dealt with a neighbor or board member who clearly enjoyed the power a little too much? Or maybe you stayed quiet when something felt wrong because it seemed easier at the time. Drop your story in the comments. Not for drama, but because silence is how this keeps happening. And if you're dealing with something right now, feeling targeted, overwhelmed, wondering if you're crazy for questioning it, trust me, you probably aren't. Sometimes the system isn't complicated. It's just counting on you not looking too closely. And the moment you do, everything changes.